Shalom, shalom. Give me 1 minute. Devil's been messing with my feed. I've been getting no sound. Slovakia, just bear with me for a moment. We'll get through this. Let me go ahead and just check my live, make sure we got volume here. All right. Test, test. Test, 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 test. Test, test. All right, come on. Test, 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 test. All right, we good here. Test, 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 test. All right, all right. Let's get to it here.
Well, a few years ago here on Redacted, we covered Sweden's bizarre microchip implanting story and their plan, which would have everyday citizens opting to have microchips implanted right into their bodies, right into their hands, the RFID or near field communications chips, or NFC, basically the size of a grain of rice. And thousands of Swedes took the plunge. And many more, since this story first published, many more thousands have taken the plunge. The idea is that the chips would speed up your user's daily life, make their lives more convenient, access their homes, office, gyms, just swipe it right on your door or keypad and you're right in there. Here is one of the individuals lining up to get one of the chip implants and just being able to get it poked right in the hands. Now, when the program started, the demand was off the charts. There were waiting lists. Companies could insert these things. They couldn't insert these things fast enough. And then shortly after it, it won high praise from the World Economic Forum.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you want to track people and they let you.
Exactly.
Revelations 3:10. Because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I will also keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world to try them that dwell upon the earth. Kol holo Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Kakodash. Double honors and salutations to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, the elder bishops, the water for your diligency and your labor throughout all these years. You're worthy of the title. Shalom to the 144,000, the men, the governing body that are pushing this word at this very hour. And shalom to the beautiful, your past spirits that were ordained to believe on the names of Yahweh, Yahweh Shah, which consists of men, women, and children. Shalom unto you, all right, those who are ordained to believe on the names, all right, as that is the actual names of the Heavenly Father and His Son in the ancient Paleo-Hebrew, and the only names that are connected to and attached to and that will bring you salvation, all right. I'm the brother Yazrael from the GMS Dallas camp coming back at you with another quick hit lesson. Abaratazah, meaning Lord willing, and be edifying unto those who are meant to receive it. Now, Salakia, this is my second attempt, my re-upload to do this video. I just sat down maybe 30 minutes ago and didn't realize that they've been messing with my sound. And so I kind of had to switch devices. And the Abaratazah, I had to check to make sure that it's working. Seems to be working just fine here. As we get into this lesson. Yeah. So without any further ado, hold on one sec here. Let's see here where we at. I think it might still be testing. Okay, yeah, we're good. Okay, so as I said, the devil's been playing with this feed, man. It's just Esau's just butter. All right, but I was going through the YouTube here, and this video popped up on my feed. All right, for those who are familiar with Redacted, right, it's a husband and wife duo team, and they pretty much give insight on a lot of different things, a plethora of things that are going on, whether it be the war in the Middle East, All right, technologies that are getting ready to be pushed forward. All right, different laws and legislations, draconian measures and stuff that are being pushed. All right, all kind of different things that go into, and a lot of brothers like to kind of, watch these because some of these internet news stations. Now we know some of them are controlled opposition, but nonetheless, right, the Lord is in control. All right, and what got my attention when this feed came up, or the video came up on my feed, was the title: "A Micro C-Hip in Your Hand, Swedes Digital ID Micro C-Hip Experiment 10 years later." Okay, and this was just done, what, maybe 3 days ago. All right, so, and again, this is just an echoing of the time that we're in right now. All right, as the men of the Lord have been prophesying, starting with the head apostles on down for 30, 40 years, the times that we're in and what's getting ready to ensue or come onto the earth. All right. And this, I'm not going to play the whole video just because, they mentioned some things, and YouTube is very sensitive when it comes to, certain buzzwords and stuff, and they'll click your videos. And that's probably what wound up happening, even though I didn't play the video. I just, but nonetheless, um, I will try and remember to put it into the description box, and you can check it out. All right, as they go into heavily, you speak about geoengineering. All right, smart dust, the jump shots, and the reasons behind it, and a plethora of other things that I'm not going to mention. But it's very. I will definitely, if I were you, it'd behoove you to check it out. All right, as they go into great detail about what's happening. All right, as a lot of you still have a lot of these camps out here that are not, pushing, what the MOTB is. All right, for those of you who saw the opening of this video, all right, and you can see right here on the screen, all right, that is the MOTB. All right, that's it. That's on the thumbnail. That's exactly what it is. It's not an embargo. It's not Christianity. It's not sleeping with a white woman. All right, it is an MOTB. All right, it is an RFID micro C-hip. Okay, and they use what you see here in the screen here, because that word mark goes into the word charagma, which is the root word is charax, which is a palisade. All right, a pointing or an instrument. If you look at what's on the screen right now, right above the play sign, you see that the tip of the needle. Now imagine a palisade. It's the same thing as or a rampart. What you would see on a palisade. A palisade would be on like they usually have them on wooden fences, and they usually surround a certain property, and they go to a point at the very end of the fence, or the very end of the stick. Right, so that's exactly what that image looked like. But nonetheless, all right, the name of this lesson is we're getting closer and closer to temptation. All right, hence the reason why I brought this precept out, and I'll read it again, Revelations 3:10. Because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I will also keep thee from the hour of temptations which will come upon all the world to try them that dwell in the world. Right, so this is that great trial period that all the world is getting ready to have to face. Okay, this is what John saw on the island of Patmos. As you saw in the video, he mentioned there are people that were lined up, and in great numbers to get this device. And this is exactly what John saw, but it's only going to get worse because as you see in the video, they started off in, what country did he say started off in? I think it was France or Slovakia, one of these countries. He said they started off in, and usually what they'll do, they'll start off in smaller countries because they use those as test grounds, right? Just to test to see how it's going to go, right, before it's brought here to America. Because anything that's brought here to America, once it's brought here in America, right, it's pretty much mandated across the world. Okay. So again, all right, that hour of temptation which will come upon all the world, all right, to try them. Okay, all right. When you go into that word try, all right, and I've done a couple lessons on this. All right, that word try is a Greek word, G3985, which is paradzo. Paradzo. It means to test or to try one's faith, virtue, character by enticement to sin. Okay, so again, this is what the world is getting ready to face. Okay, because in our laws, when you read Leviticus 19, what is it, the 27th to 28th verse, right, it states that you are not to make any cuttings within your flesh. Okay, so this is going to be an enticement, all right, for the world to basically to sin. And this is the ultimate sin because there will be no forgiveness, all right, for this sin. All right. You're in alliance with the devil. All right. If you take this MOTB, and there ain't no I took it for a minute and I can pull it back out. No. Okay, you're pretty much letting the Yahweh Shah that you are not with him, you are none of his, and you belong unto Satan. All right, with that, there comes destruction. Okay, and so this man is going to create things and situations, all right, that are going to make it very hard to resist. Okay, when you go into this word, also the root word of try, it's G4008. The root word is paran, which means to pierce through. To pierce through. Again, to pierce through what? To pierce through the skin. All right, a delivery system. Okay, that's going to deliver a device underneath the skin. All right, it also goes into grapho and etching. All right. So this is what the world is getting ready to be faced with. All right. And as this man pushes this, all right, as you see, as he mentioned in the video, a lot of people were lining up. They wanted to get this device. All right. They were, very inquisitive of it. And this is only going to, ensue as this man perfects it. Okay. This is, as a matter of fact, I'm going to grab that, Revelations 13 and I'm going to start at 3. And I saw one of his heads as it was wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And here's the point: and all the world wondered after the beast. Right. So when you go into that chapter, Revelations 13 chapter, right, it's talking about the first beast and the second beast. The first beast is the ancient Roman Empire. Okay. All right. And the second, and which went down, we know it fell, and what I want to say around 476. All right, BC, but then it pretty much 476, and it pretty much how do you say it revived during what it's called the Renaissance era. Okay, Renaissance, Ren meaning back or re, okay, and Naissance meaning birth. All right, rebirth of what? Right supremacy, rebirth of Esau Edom's rulership. Okay, on the earth. Okay, so what it's saying here, it says, and I saw the head as it was wounded to death, and this deadly wound was healed. Went down 476 for about 1,000 years, came back roughly around the 1400s. Okay, the Renaissance area. From that period all the way into the period that we are in today. So, all right, basically we're living in Rome 2.0. Okay, and so as that beast is back in its full effect, it goes on to say what? And all the world wondered after the beast, right? Because this technology right here is going to be something, all right, as this man perfects this technology, it's going to do amazing things, okay? And people are going to wonder after this thing. And people are going to marvel. As a matter of fact, when you go into that word wonder, it's G2296, and it's Dalmadzo, and it says to wonder at, to marvel, to be wondered at, to be had in admiration, right? When you admire something, all right? And certain synonyms to that would be like respect or esteemed, appreciation, or to be had at a high regard, right? Or an adoration, all right? Because what this man's technology is getting ready to do, a lot of people are going to be amazed at the capabilities of this thing, all right? What he's going to do, he's going to create certain um, quandaries and different dire situations of fear that are going to entice you, or should I say, causeth you, Revelations 13 and 16, all right, to receive that mark, that device. Okay, so as I said, when you watch this video and you see all the things that they talk about in the video, it does amazing things. For those who weren't able to walk, you're going to be able to walk. For those who didn't have sight, those who weren't able to hear, or they had limbs that were missing, or their limbs weren't working. All right, with this device, all right, you're going to be able to have all of that functionality back. Okay, and that's going to be a wonder, all right, into the world. All right, but we know what's also linked to that is persecution, right? Because there are a certain number of us, all right, those who have not bent a knee to Baal, those who are not going to bow to this man's system, that are going to preach against this, and we're going to look where people are going to be. People are going to be angry. Okay, ultimately they're going to want blood, because who are we to say that if a man who's never walked before, if he gets this device and he's able to walk and we tell him not to get it, how is that going to make us look? Well, ultimately because we know what the end game of that is. All right, we know what the outcome of that is if you receive that mark. But even when told to people, All right, as it's being told to people, people aren't still going to believe it. All right, because they're still going to be in the flesh. They're still going to be a part of this world. And that's what's going to really help push upon this persecution. All right, for those that are just in the world. All right, because we preach against this man's philosophies, his democracy, his technology, his wonders. All right, but nonetheless, as this sword is perfected, all right, it's going to do amazing things. And a lot of people are going to be enticed. All right, when food shortages start to happen, people aren't going to be able to get their medical supplies. All right, you're not going to be able to have access to water. You're not going to be able to pay your bills. Right, you're not going to have food and shelter. All right, what are you going to do in those times? Okay, that's why the first precept I started off with is Revelation 3:10, because thou have kept the word of my patience. Patience meaning to suffer. So he's talking about the elect of Israel. All right, those who believe in the names of Yahweh, Yahweh Shah, those who are suffering patiently. So what did he say here? This is a promise. I will also keep you from the hour of temptation. So he's going to keep those specific men from this hour. Okay, he's going to keep those specific spirits from this temptation in that day when all the world is going to be tried. There's going to be a certain number that has already been set aside that the Lord is not going to allow this to affect, right? Because when you go into what is that, Isaiah 66, the Lord talks about how his servants shall eat, his servants shall drink. But those who have taken the mark or those who didn't want to listen are going to be hungry. They're going to pine away. They're going to be thirsty. They're going to die ultimately. All right. So this is something to be taken very, very seriously. So hence the name of this lesson. We are getting closer and closer to temptation. Right? For there are certain number of camps out here, like I said, I've been talking about, the MOTB is everything but what our apostles and bishops, all right, starting with our heads, have been saying for over 30, 40 years. All right, you're in folly. And anyone who follows after them, you're going to be in folly. And you're going to be left, you're going to be in a pitiful case in that day. All right, it's not an embargo. It's not Christianity. It's not sin. Hell, we were created in sinful flesh. I mean, that just makes absolutely no sense. Okay, it's not sleeping with white women. Okay, it's talking about commerce. All right, you will not be able to buy or sell, commerce, financial transactions. You will not be able to live on the grid without this MOTB. Okay, and as I said, they use all of these different countries, France and all these different countries around the world, Switzerland, all right, to pretty much use them as test marks to see how people are going to react. The same thing with the jump shot. That was nothing more than a psyops to see how many people will actually go for it as opposed to ones that they won't, so they'll know what to do in that time. All right, so this devil is very, very clever. Call Holo Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, that he sent his men out to be able to give you a true understanding. All right, only for those who have spiritual ears to hear and spiritual eyes to see. All right, what's going on around them. Okay. So this is why it's very, very important. So because people are going to be looking to save themselves in that day. I get it. In the flesh, you get it. Our bodies were designed to eat. They were designed to drink. All right. But we know that scripture says we have no continuing city rising apart. This is not our rest. We are in captivity. This is Esau's world. This is not ours. All right. We have a punishment that we have to live out. But call Holo Yahweh Shah. We are at the end of this thing. All right. So we must hold on and keep the patience. All right. That the Lord may deliver us in this time. All right, so our faith, absolutely believe it. All right, we have to believe that what's written in this book, Yahweh Shah said that he's going to do, he will do. All right, what is that? Matthew 16:25 says, for whosoever shall save his life shall lose it. All right, if you seek to save your life, and one of the main reasons and main ways a lot of people out here are going to do that, is by taking this MOTB. Because you're not going to have the faith that's needed. You're not going to have the spirit of Yahweh upon you. All right, you have children. Those who have children, you got a woman. All right, they'll be crying. All right, family members. All right, and you have no food, you have no way out. Okay, ultimately, what's going to happen? You're going to seek to save your life. But what did Yahweh say here? Right here, he said, those who seek to save their life, they're going to lose it. All right, the core message being the true spiritual life that can only be found through self-denial. All right, and following Yahweh by Yahweh Shah. All right, what did he say in what is that? Luke the 9th chapter. As a matter of fact, I'm going to grab that. It's Luke 9 and 23. And he said to them all right, this is Yahweh Shah talking to the disciples, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. You see that? What I said before, denying themselves. When you actually go into that word deny, it's a Greek word, which is G720, and it's what is it? Arneomai, Arneomai, Arneomai. It says not to accept, to reject, to refuse something offered. See, because this is going to come as peace and safety. It's going to come as something offered, a way out, all right, the way to give relief. All right, pretty soon it's going to go from that to being mandated. You're not going to have a choice. Going back to Revelation 13:16, he causeth all great and small, rich and poor, free and bond to receive this mark. Okay? So you must deny this. All right? If you follow Yahushua. What is Sirach 2:1 says what? My son, if thou come to serve the Lord, prepare thy soul for temptation, right? So this is the ultimate temptation that we must prepare our souls for. Right? And many are going to lose their lives from this procedure because they're going to seek to save their lives. All right? So we're getting ready to face the ultimate temptation. Okay? And there is a price to pay, right, for those of you that have, or that that are going to take it, which we know the majority of you are. 2/3 of our people are going to, without a doubt, or they're not going to make it, let alone the rest of the world, or the rest of Babylon, should I say, because that's chiefly the only place here in America that's going to utterly be destroyed. Okay, but there's a price that goes along with that. All right, if you ain't ate a missile beforehand, all right, there's going to be a grievous sword that's going to come upon these people who take this mark. Matter of fact, I'm going to grab that in Revelation 16 and I think it's verse 2. I'm going to start at verse 1 though. So like it. Revelation 16 and 1. And I heard a great voice out of the temple saying to the seven angels, go your ways and pour out the vials of the wrath of Yahweh Bashem Yahshua upon the earth. What's that? Judgments, plagues. All right. This is all visions that John saw on the island of Patmos. All right. Of the latter end time that we're in right now. Okay. Well, these plagues are now being poured out onto the earth. It goes on to say, and the first went out and poured out his vial upon the earth. And there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon all the men, check this out, which have the mark of the beast, the MOTB, and upon them which worshipped the image. You see, right, that went along with the get along here in Babylon. Okay? You see, when you go into that, so what's that ultimately talking about? It's talking about cancer. All right? It's RFID microchip, okay, that's being put into your flesh. Okay? And you will get cancer from that. As a matter of fact, when you go into that word grievous sore, all right, it is G1667, Helkos. All right, it says a wound, especially a wound producing a discharged pus, a sore, or an ulcer. Right, so basically that grievous sore, all right, that from that MOTB is going to cause or produce cancer for people. Okay, I think it's called squamous carcinomas, I believe it is. And it's a skin cancer, all right? And it tends to look like patches of lumps rising on the skin, and it's kind of scaly, if I remember. And they grow in different sizes, all right? And they have like kind of like a crater-like appearance or ulcer appearance. And a lot of times they can discharge a foul yellow creatine kind of smell similar to pus. All right, so ultimately that's what's going to happen because you're putting radiation under your skin. You see? So, like I said, I don't want to make this video too long. I just want to really get directly to the point. As I said, if you watch, I'll go ahead and I'll put the description of the video, the link in the video, and you can watch the full redacted video. They go in, they go in heavy. But, I think the main point is overall, all right, everything they're all talking about really, really surrounds what we saw in the very first part of the video. And that is the MOTB. Okay? All right, so these are the times when we are getting closer and closer and closer to that time. All right, so it behooves you to cling on to Yahweh Bashem Yahushua. All right, call upon the names, all right, that you may have deliverance in the time that we're coming into. Okay, as I said, I don't want to make the video too long. All right, I want to give all honors and praises to Yahweh Bashem Yahushua, Bahashim Makakodash, them honors and salutations to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Shalom.